Hey there, good morning everyone. I'm Errol Barnett in for Vladimir Duthier this Friday. At this moment, we're gathering details on all the major news happening across the U.S. and around the world. First up, critical talks underway this morning between Ukraine and Russia. But without either country's president, is there a chance they can really reach a peace deal through those talks? Also, a string of tornadoes rips through the Midwest. We're tracking the devastation left behind and where this dangerous storm system moves next. Plus, we're now getting an exclusive inside look at the outages plaguing Newark Airport. We're also learning about yet another equipment failure at Denver's airport this week. We'll bring you everything you need to know. This is CBS News 24/7. All right, let's begin with the war in Ukraine. You've got Russian and Ukrainian officials meeting today in Turkey for direct talks. This is the first time they've had direct talks in 3 years. The two sides were supposed to meet yesterday, but those talks fell through. We told you about President Zelensky and Putin now not in attendance for this meeting. CBS News senior foreign correspondent Elizabeth Palmer connects with us now to talk more about this. Good morning, Liz. What are we hearing from these talks so far? It must be seen as a positive development in the least that the two nations are talking directly.
Well, briefly as well, the talks began and they've already ended. They lasted a mere 2 hours, and the news trickling out is a bit disappointing, which is sort of what we expected. It appears that the biggest achievement is that they have agreed to swap 1,000 prisoners each, although there have been prisoner swaps going on all the time, so that isn't as great as it sounds. One Ukrainian source told the Reuters news agency that Moscow's demands at the table were non-starters. It is widely thought that the Russians are playing for time, maybe so they can mount a fresh offensive in northeastern Ukraine now that the weather is better. At any rate, they didn't send top-flight officials to these talks, which is a form of messaging. They sent a presidential aide and the head of Russian military intelligence, whereas on the Ukrainian side, President Zelensky himself didn't attend, but he did send his chief of staff along with his defense and his foreign ministers. He is determined to show both the Europeans and especially the Americans who are supporting this dialogue that he is trying hard to find a way to end the war, and that it's Vladimir Putin who's the problem.
And so, Liz, what is then the American role? Because Secretary of State Marco Rubio, he emphasized President Trump's comments that Trump would need to attend in order for Putin to join in, and then that makes it seem as if the U.S. really has the keys to peace. But what do European nations and Ukrainians make of that?
Look, I think the European support is crucial, but it takes American heft to convince Vladimir Putin to deal seriously. He will see Donald Trump as the head of another superpower, and President Trump may just be able to nudge him in the right direction. Although I have to say, I was just in Moscow, and political watchers there pointed out that there are big downsides to President Putin ending this war. The Russian economy is not in great shape, but it is keeping people fed and employed in spite of the sanctions, so there's no real pressure there. Meanwhile, the Russian military is gaining ground in Ukraine, slowly, but they are making gains. And if Putin should end the war, he will have a flood of traumatized young men returning to Russia, no longer on the big salaries they're getting in combat, potentially dangerous. And also the Russian people are going to start to ask whether the invasion and the war was worth the deaths of, well, nobody really knows the figure, but it's certainly well over 100,000 Russian soldiers. So for the moment, Vladimir Putin, there's a lot of incentive for him to just kick the ball down the road.
Yeah, it's great insight from you, Liz, considering you were just in Moscow. So we appreciate you joining us and presenting that as well. Elizabeth Palmer joining us from London. Now, President Trump is in the air as we speak. He's headed back to Washington after his 4-day trip to the Middle East. The administration is now shifting to other priorities, like a potential deal with Iran over its nuclear program. CBS News correspondent Natalie Brand joins us now from the White House with more on this. Natalie, good morning to you once again. So did the Trump administration meet all of its goals that it aimed to achieve? And where do we stand with that Iranian nuclear deal?
Good morning, Errol. Well, President Trump speaking to reporters on Air Force One shortly after they climbed aboard the plane to return home confirmed that his administration has handed Iran a proposal for a new nuclear deal. And he also went on to say that Iran knows they have to move quickly or something bad is going to happen. It's similar to remarks that he expressed earlier in the week, particularly during his visit to Qatar, where he said that, there's a nice way to do this and a not nice step, and he's hoping that they can reach an agreement without having to take that not nice step, alluding to earlier threats about a military strike. Obviously, the details of this proposal remain unclear at this point, but confirmation today that the administration has presented them with a proposal. So we'll have to wait and see what happens there. On this trip overall, regional stability in the Middle East was obviously a topic, no doubt discussed behind closed doors, but in public, in front of the cameras, there is this heavy emphasis on business deals, the White House touting and the president touting trillions of dollars in new investment commitments by the 3 Gulf states that he visited, the White House saying it's about $2 trillion.
And we know that you just mentioned that multi-billion-dollar deal with the UAE. What about that agreement that involves Boeing?
Yeah, Boeing has come up quite a bit on this trip. Yesterday, it was announced that there's a deal for $14.5 billion between Boeing and an airline out of the UAE, Etihad Airways, to invest in about 28 U.S.-made planes. This comes after news earlier in the week, that deal between Boeing and Qatar. Here's more of what the president had to say about the investments in Boeing.
It's just my opinion, but Boeing makes the best plane. And they've had some headaches over the last few years, but they make the best plane, and you see what's happening. And it's not the only case, but a lot of people are ordering the Boeing jets, and they're gearing up. And I think it's going to be one of the great stories.
The president has also framed this as good news for U.S. jobs, since the planes will be made here. And we also know that healthcare and tech were also big topics on this trip, particularly in the UAE, with a partnership announced, a framework of a deal to build a big data center in the UAE, Errol.
All right, all interesting stuff. Natalie Brand with the latest at the White House. Natalie, thanks. Another day of severe storms across the U.S. today. You've got several communities cleaning up right now from this. You had devastating tornadoes that tore through parts of the Midwest. Thousands of people are still without power right now as well. Today, more than 70 million people from Texas to New Jersey could be at risk as well from these severe thunderstorms. There's also potential tornadoes and hurricane strength wind gusts. CBS News national correspondent Lana Zak joins us live from Juneau, Wisconsin. Lana, good morning to you. Show us around a bit and explain to us what you're seeing there this morning.
Well, hey there, Errol. Just from the few hours from which we spoke last, there has been tremendous change. This is Main Street here in Juneau. When we were speaking earlier this morning, there were power lines that were down all over down this street, making travel next to impossible here. You can see these bright, shiny new power lines have all been installed. I spoke with the mayor, who expressed his extreme gratitude for the number of communities who have come out to try and help people here as they really face down some significant risks. Take a listen.
The worst that I've seen is this stretch we're sitting in. It must have ripped right through here. There's an adult home on the backside of Clearview here, which had...
Did people have to be evacuated from the adult home?
Roof was tore completely off.
Now, we heard about at least 2 people who were taken to the hospital with some injuries. One, a firefighter who sustained injuries to their leg. Another is the person who lives in the blue house back there behind me. I went over there earlier. The roof has been completely sheared off. There is a giant tree that fell through the front part of his house. I spoke with his neighbor. She said that that is actually his bedroom and that he was there in bed when the tree fell down there. Her house right here, this brown one, has part of the roof taken off. That area, she says, is where her teenage boys would have normally been at that time. By a stroke of good luck, God's fortune, she says, they were at a friend's house on the other side of town. They are so grateful that even though there is devastation in this community and to their own homes, that there were no serious injuries.
Yeah, just remarkable and encouraging. They've already got the power lines back up. They really do move quickly there. That's Lana Zach for us in Juneau, Wisconsin. Thanks, Lana. All right, a major rail strike in New Jersey. It's forced more than 300,000 commuters to find an alternative way to get to work today. Where are we? Right behind me, you'll see New Jersey Transit Rail engineers that walked off the job at midnight. The union, representing hundreds of workers, is demanding higher wages. And it says the competition pays more and workers haven't seen a pay raise in 5 years, even though the cost of living, as we all know, has increased. Officials are now giving an update on this. I think we've got the governor of New Jersey speaking. Let's listen in.
Commuters here in Monmouth County and frankly all across New Jersey this morning is anything but a good morning. Their days are off to an unnecessarily difficult start. We're now roughly 10 hours into New Jersey's first rail strike in decades. And I want to make sure we get one thing straight up front. It did not have to come to this. Here with me this morning, as he was last night, is the outstanding president and CEO of NJ Transit, Chris Calori. He and his team, many of whom are here with us this morning, along with our entire administration, again, many of them represented this morning, have been working around the clock, frankly, for months to avoid the strike. And now they are continuing to work around the clock to rearrange our state's entire transportation system so it can, to the best of our abilities, meet the needs of New Jerseyans. And I will ask Chris to elaborate on those details in just a few minutes. At this moment, our single highest priority, in addition to making the system work, just as it has been for the past several months, is reaching a fair and affordable deal as soon as humanly possible. A deal that provides NJ Transit's employees, including our locomotive engineers, the wages and benefits they deserve, without being forced to raise costs on riders, commuters, and taxpayers. As I said last night, here in New Jersey, we are proud to be the quintessential organized labor state. As Chris will attest to, 14 of the 15 unions with which NJ Transit engages are in complete harmony. NJ Transit's employees are the backbone of our public transit system. But the workers who depend on NJ Transit are the backbone of our entire economy. They deserve a public transit system that is reliable and affordable, period. So in our efforts to balance fairness on the one hand with affordability on the other, back in March, Chris and the Blitz representatives shook hands on a contract that would pay engineers roughly the same hourly wage, literally give or take 10 cents per hour, as engineers with the Long Island Railroad. In other words, it would have given their members almost exactly what they have asked for, being paid the same wage as engineers at other transit systems in our region.
All right, we've been listening there to New Jersey's Governor Murphy on the status of ongoing talks that have now been unable to prevent the strike today from New Jersey transit workers. And of course, New Jersey sits on this major transportation corridor in the Northeast. We'll continue to listen in on this and bring you updates on the strike as it comes in. Both CBS News New York and CBS News Philadelphia will also be covering this throughout the day, an issue important to so many people. Now, day 5 of Sean Diddy Combs' sex trafficking trial got underway, in fact, just a few moments ago. We'll take you live outside the federal courthouse in Manhattan with the latest. You're in the right place, streaming CBS News 24/7. Welcome back. At this moment, Sean Diddy Combs' ex-girlfriend, Cassie Ventura, is being cross-examined by his legal team for a second day. As you may know, the singer, who is pregnant, has been testifying since Tuesday, but the judge said that ends today unless lawyers have a compelling reason to make her continue. CBS News legal reporter Katrina Kaufman is outside the federal courthouse in Manhattan this morning. She's been following this trial all week. Katrina, I know that proceedings just got underway in this last hour or so bring us up to speed on what's happening.
Good morning, Errol. So, yes, they're just getting into the cross-examination with Sean Combs' ex-girlfriend, Cassie Ventura. This is expected to last through the end of the day. The defense has been told that they really need to get this witness off the stand. The prosecution has pressed the fact that she is very pregnant. It's hard to emphasize just how pregnant she looks on that stand, Errol. 8.5 months as she testifies about this very, very graphic exchanges and experiences that she had with Sean Combs. They started out by revisiting an incident that we have talked about a lot during this trial at the Intercontinental Hotel. There is security footage of that the jury and likely many people have seen, where Sean Combs appears to be aggressively assaulting Cassie Ventura in it. During this morning, they were asking her about how intoxicated he seemed. They said that she had said he seemed blackout drunk on the drugs and the alcohol they had. She said that people have different definitions of blackout, but what we seem to be seeing the defense trying to establish here from both sides is state of mind, and that they were both on a lot of drugs during this period. Yesterday, they got into Cassie's drug use. She has admitted on the stand that she was addicted to opiates. They are also trying to show warm exchanges between the two, and ones where she even showed potential excitement about these freak-offs they engaged in, these sort of drug-fueled sex acts that he directed her in. So we see them trying to set up a case for her complicity in this, for the consent that was involved, and for the love that was in this relationship to counter the prosecution's case.
And so, Katrina, as we head to the end of the week, if you're a member of this jury, what impression would you have likely received from this first week of testimony from Cassie and the defense trying to cross-examine her?
Errol, that's a great question. One thing that I would say is I've been very impressed by the way that Cassie Ventura has composed herself on the stand. She's been talking about very, very difficult testimony, very graphic, very pornographic, very violent testimony about her experience with Sean Combs. But I'd say that she's really handled it with grace and seems like someone who has really reflected on those experiences. During the defense's cross, she's also come off very well. She seems extremely well prepared, Errol, and hasn't really been shaken at all. On her first day of testimony, she broke down crying on the stand a number of times. So I'd say she's been a very sympathetic witness. In terms of the strength of the case, it's really too early to say. The prosecution has absolutely laid the building blocks of their charges. And, so far the defense is making some case to counter aspects of it, but we really still need to see how this all comes together. And we'll need to see many more witnesses' testimony to see if the prosecution can really prove this to that jury. But they have been absolutely riveted by the testimony. They are watching intently. They are taking notes. And this has to be a very fascinating and difficult trial to be a part of.
Yeah, and now that jury goes into the weekend with this emotional imprint. So definitely a standout start for the prosecution. Katrina Kaufman with us there just outside the courthouse here in Manhattan. Katrina, thank you. An FAA official tells Congress pilots in Denver were unable to communicate with the control tower on Monday for nearly 2 full minutes. The official said both the temporary and the the primary and the main backup frequencies at the Denver airport went down, and that forced air traffic controllers to scramble to use yet another emergency systems. And this, of course, comes as CBS News obtains exclusive video showing the moment screens went blank inside the troubled tower handling flights at Newark Airport. CBS News senior transportation correspondent Chris Van Cleve brings us the latest.
This video shows the moment when one of these outages impacting the facility handling flights in and out of Newark hit. This was Friday, May 9th. It was a little bit before 4 in the morning. This was about a 90-second outage, and what you see are the screens that provide critical information to air traffic controllers. They're blank. It's just a black screen in this video. You get a sense then why it was so hard for controllers to track aircraft and communicate with aircraft reliably when they couldn't see what was going on. Now, again, it was a 90-second outage. It was at a particularly slow time. This was the second of these types of outages recently. It followed the one in the middle of the day, May 28th, that led to controllers seeking trauma leave. We also see the moment when most of the screens come back on. Now, this is going on as work continues to upgrade the communications and the telecommunications at that facility. Also, the FAA and the Department of Transportation are entering their third day of talks with the nation's airlines about addressing the delays at Newark Airport. That likely means cutting flights ahead of the busy summer travel season. Back to you.
All right, Chris Van Cleve, thanks for that. We turn our attention now to the war in Gaza. Israeli forces are ramping up their offensive in the Gaza Strip this morning. According to the Hamas-run health ministry, airstrikes across the enclave reportedly killed nearly 100 people. Before leaving the Middle East, President Trump commented on the ongoing conflict.
We're looking at Gaza, and we got to get that taken care of. A lot of people are starving. There's a lot of bad things going on.
CBS News foreign correspondent Deborah Patta brings us more on the situation there.
Hopes that President Trump's visit to the Gulf states this week could usher in a ceasefire deal and the renewal of humanitarian aid in Gaza are fading. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's vow to escalate the war until Hamas is defeated came into full force overnight. Israeli strikes across the territory lasted for several hours, adding to the week's rising death toll, many of them women and children with bodies still trapped beneath the rubble. The daily struggle for survival is not just about escaping airstrikes. The humanitarian crisis aid organizations have been warning about for weeks is no longer looming in Gaza. It is happening right now. 500,000 Palestinians face starvation. 1 million more can barely get enough food to survive. Israel's aid blockade is now in its third month, with at least 57 children dying from malnutrition over that period. It is the longest continuous siege Palestinians have endured since the war began over 19 months ago. Back to you.
Deborah Patta reporting. Deborah, thank you. Federal officials are investigating former FBI Director James Comey over an alleged threat he posted online against President Trump. We'll explain all of that next. You're in the right place, streaming CBS News 24/7. Welcome back, everyone. We want to look through the big stories we're following for you right now. The man who stabbed famed author Salman Rushdie is set to be sentenced in a New York courtroom today. The jury found Hadi Matar guilty of attempted murder and assault earlier this year. He was convicted of stabbing Rushdie during a lecture back in 2022. That attack left the author blind in one eye. The district attorney says he's seeking the maximum 25-year prison sentence. Doctors in Pennsylvania saved a baby's life with the world's first personalized gene editing therapy. The 9.5-month-old boy was born with a rare genetic disorder. Half of all babies born with it die within their first week of life. Doctors and scientists at Children's Hospital of Philadelphia gave the baby an infusion tailored specifically to him and his mutation. They say therapy has partially reversed his condition and lessened his chances of brain damage or even death. Doctors say they need to continue monitoring him in the long term to watch how the treatment is working. And the Department of Homeland Security has requested 20,000 National Guard troops to help with the president's immigration crackdown. Officials are telling CBS News these troops would help law enforcement with logistics and operations at the border. The Defense Department is still reviewing that request. There are already nearly 9,000 troops at the border as the Trump administration expands its use of the military to support its immigration efforts. And the Department of Homeland Security and Secret Service are now investigating this man. It's former FBI Director James Comey. It's all over a post that he shared, then deleted on Instagram, which showed seashells in the sand forming the numbers 86 and 47. Federal officials say the post was meant to incite violence against President Trump. Comey says he just thought it was a political statement and he is against violence. CBS News Department of Justice reporter Jake Rosen joins us now with more on this Friday. Jake, great to see you. Help us understand why what Comey says was a benign post, is actually being viewed as a threat that could come with ramifications.
Well, that's right, Errol. 86 in kind of informal language could mean, if you work in a restaurant setting, right, to kind of take something off the menu, cross it out. In a more sinister setting, think about maybe a mob movie or some kind of, more aggressive tone. It could mean to 86 as in take something out, right? Also, potentially could be interpreted as digging a grave, right? 8 foot wide, 6 foot deep. That's certainly what the Trump administration seized on last night when this was first posted by Comey before it was taken down. They say that it's a direct threat against the president. President Trump responded to it in an interview with another network that aired overnight and early this morning, in which he said Comey knew exactly what he was posting, despite his statement that it was just a political message and obviously there was no intent of violence behind it. He said it's up to Attorney General Pam Bondi to decide what to do with that. However, obviously people who are in support of Comey's political message, not necessarily obviously the threat of violence, say that it would be obviously an infringement on his free speech rights to just post something like that without any kind of more direct threat of violence against the president.
Yeah, what a bizarre moment. I want to turn to a different topic with you now. The judge in Kilmar Abrego Garcia's case is hearing arguments today over the government's justification to withhold information about him. What are we expecting to hear in court today?
Well, after a couple of weeks of explosive hearings, Errol, there really has been no movement on this case in the last couple of weeks because the judge ordered some discovery or fact-finding in the case. The Department of Justice says that it's answered all the questions it can and is invoking some privileges, including state secret privileges. Attorneys for Abrego Garcia have said that those answers are not substantial enough and that they've been stonewalled, citing a court filing. They are asking this judge to grant further depositions, including potentially talking to someone at the White House with more direct knowledge about what efforts either have been underway or could be underway to return the man. However, we've seen President Trump, Caroline Leavitt, and Secretary of Homeland Security Kristi Noem all say that they cannot bring him back.
All right, Jake Rosen in our D.C. bureau. Jake, thank you for that. The House Budget Committee is meeting this morning to finalize the GOP's budget reconciliation bill. Key issues remain among lawmakers, including major cuts to Medicaid and state and local tax deductions. CBS News congressional correspondent Nicole Killian is speaking with Representative Steve Scalis right now. Let's jump in and listen.
Look, we're all in agreement on the reforms we want to make. We want to have work requirements. We want to phase out a lot of these green subsidies. How quickly can you get it done? And it's not as quickly as saying you just turn it off tomorrow. Some things the administration does have to actually create a process to implement it, and we want to make sure that the Trump administration has the time they need while pushing them as fast as possible. So those are the conversations we're having, and we're making a lot of progress.
Have you spoken to the president at all?
Do you expect the president to weigh in?
The president's been following all this very closely. I know he's coming back from a foreign trip, so he's going to be actively engaged, as he has the whole way through this process.
Do you want the committee to work today?
I'd like the committee to keep doing its work, and they are. I'm glad they started today. I know there were some questions yesterday of, the committee might be canceled. We didn't want that to happen, and they met. And I appreciate Chairman Arrington's aggressive approach, too. Chairman Arrington wants to keep this bill moving. There's going to be work to be done in the Rules Committee. We already knew that. Issues like SALT are still going to be worked through the weekend. We're having conversations as we go through the weekend to resolve SALT. That's going to be addressed in the Rules Committee. So there were already some items that we were going to take up when Rules meets. These are a couple of additional items, just reworking the timelines of implementation. But that's Rules, that's not Budget. Budget doesn't have that ability to make any changes to the bill. They're pulling it all together.
So you still feel confident you can get this done by Memorial Day?
Right here.
Do you expect this to require the president to weigh in order to get this across the finish line?
Well, there are some questions that the Trump administration is going to be getting us answers back on. We'd sent some things to them, some questions that our members have on implementation by the Trump administration. So they're going to be weighing back in on that. Will the president himself directly weigh in? Not necessarily on all of these. I mean, he's following all of this. He's been giving us a lot of help along the way when we've had direct questions that he needed to answer. Some of these are things that some different people in the Trump administration need to answer because they're going to be implementing those pieces within different departments of the Trump administration.
Well, it seems he's already weighed in this morning in a Truth Social post saying some of your members shouldn't be grandstanding. Do you agree?
Look, President Trump wants to get this bill moved through the process as quickly as possible to make sure it gets on his desk in July. So do we. We would like to have that process move even quicker if it's possible, but we want to make sure we're moving it through the House on our timeline that we've kept, and that means having it pass the full House next week, which means we've still got a few more steps to go. We all know what those steps are. We all know the remaining work we have to get done, and we're in the process of doing that work right now.
Mr. Secretary said he's still waiting for you guys to make some commitments to him to vote for this.
Yeah.
And that you need to recess this.
When did he make that comment to you?
Just a few minutes ago.
I just walked out of a meeting with him a few minutes ago as well. We're working on some questions that Ralph and others have, and we're going to be getting them answers as soon as we get them back from the Trump administration. His questions were the same as Chip's and a few others, and they're very specific questions, valid questions. We're working on getting those answers right now.
He says they need to recess to make that happen.
They're still working through their process. We're still working through our process. A little bit more work to do. I've got to go right now because I got.
Are you concerned about the Senate changing this package even after
you want to get it to the Senate so they have the ability to start their work?
The second reconciliation.
Okay. So what you have been listening to, this is Nicole Killian from Capitol Hill. A little bit of chaos this morning. Hopefully you can see me, but we are outside of the House Budget Committee. That was the Majority Leader, Steve Scalise, who just wrapped up a gaggle with reporters because the House Budget Committee is right in these doors behind me, and they are essentially assembling this big, beautiful bill that the president wants to see Congress approve. And so we have watched over several weeks now these various committees mark up their respective portions. Now the Budget Committee is tying everything together, but there are some members inside that room who have suggested they may vote against this package. Members like Congressman Ralph Norman, who you heard the Majority Leader reference there. Norman has walked in and out of this meeting along with Congressman Chip Roy, another conservative, Congressman Andrew Clyde, right before this markup got underway, suggesting that the panel should recess because, again, they continue to have concerns. Their main issue is that they believe these spending cuts simply don't go far enough. And so you heard the Majority Leader there say, look, we are working with them. We are trying to negotiate and meet their needs. But ultimately, the Majority Leader would like to see this bill come out of committee. And of course, the president now weighing in on this as well, urging Republicans to unite.
That's right. Nicole Killian giving us all the latest information up to the second, getting some questions in there to Steve Scalise and giving us a sense of why this hasn't passed yet, the pressure from President Trump and the efforts by House Republicans to finish the work. Nicole Killian with the latest for us. Thank you so much. Right now, we're watching a storm system marching its way across the country. Let's bring in CBS News Philadelphia meteorologist Tammy Souza with the guidance on where it will hit and who needs to look out. Hey there, Tammy.
Ooh, a lot of us need to watch out for it, Errol. Let's go ahead and take a look at just what has happened in the last 24 hours. Hundreds of reports. These are tornadoes, hail, flooding rains. Some of them are lightning because fires started, and damaging wind gusts. And we're going to continue to see this pattern as we go through the day today. Right now, we have a line of very strong storms that's stretching from Tennessee all the way into the middle of Kentucky. And along with that, we do have a severe thunderstorm watch. And where you see the orange boxes, Those are severe thunderstorm warnings. We did have a tornado warning in that area earlier. We also have a line of very strong storms and a lot of intense lightning. Look at that little white popping up. That is the lightning moving in to the northeast. This is going to be moving into New York, Philadelphia. Right now, it is coming through the Philadelphia suburbs, so Upper Bucks, Montgomery, into parts of Berks County, Lancaster, even Chester County. Be on guard because we have a severe thunderstorm warning there. And then we have a severe thunderstorm watch box until 5 o'clock for that area. So let's go ahead and talk a little bit more about who's going to be under the gun for this. We are looking at an area that is pretty much in the Tennessee Valley and into the Ohio Valley. You're talking about places like St. Louis, Nashville, Indianapolis. So we're looking at these areas that are in the bullseye for where the severe weather is. That's where you see the reds and the oranges. That yellow, it stretches from the south all the way up to the northeast, and that is an area of concern as well for severe weather today. This is the area of concern for tornadoes in those cities I listed right in the middle of this. Now, what's going on? We have got all of this CAPE. What is CAPE? It is the fuel for these severe storms. We like to call it severe storm, even tornado fuel. It is coming off of the Gulf. This is all the moisture, the buoyancy that we're looking at, and that is moving right on up into the northeast, and it will continue going that way today. We are also looking at this storm kind of splitting into pieces. So we have one piece across the Tennessee Valley, another piece into the northeast. These are going to coalesce, and we'll see a line of storms coming into the northeast by tonight. The main body of this system still churning away across the plains in the upper Midwest, and that is what will trigger more storms into tomorrow morning. Errol, back to you.
Such a useful way to explain it all, Tammy. Folks in the Northeast, get your umbrellas out. We'll see you later this hour. Thanks so much. The Cannes Film Festival is underway over in France. Coming up, we'll chat about all the things that the movie debuts are generating. There's some glitz, there's some glamour, and some edits to what you can have on the red carpet there. You're in the right place, streaming CBS News 24/7. As part of our Eye on Us series, we want to look at the rising number of people who are considered unhoused. The Department of Housing and Urban Development says the number of unhoused Americans rose 18% in 2024 compared to the previous year. CBS News correspondent Ian Lee looks at the effort to end the chronic problem in Kansas City.
Many consider this the most dangerous area in Kansas City. But for years, couples Smoke and Serena have called it home.
Violence, oh man, violence is, it brings out the worst in you, man, down here. It pushes you to a whole nother limit.
Here, you sleep with one eye open.
You never know if you're gonna wake up the next day, or you can't take a nap. You never know if somebody's gonna come in and try to steal your stuff or rob you.
Josh Henges leads the city's fight to end homelessness. A tall order, as Kansas City has the worst rate of chronically homeless people sleeping on the streets in the country.
We're trying to build something here. The goal is to get people out of this.
At his side are Kevin Morgan and Nick Allen. Allen is the point man. He works to build trust, a crucial step in getting people off the streets.
You left? You're over here?
On this day, they're checking in.
We are set to double our homeless population in less than 4 years because we're not doing this right.
Henges wants to change that.
Homelessness is the most solvable problem America has chosen not to solve.
What steps would you take?
Number one, you've got to align funding. You've got to build a system that delivers people out of homelessness, no matter where they fall in. That is what you have to do.
I stripped this down.
He calls it functional zero, aiming for anyone who becomes homeless to be back on their feet in 30 days.
There's enough money currently in this system to solve this problem, but it is not coordinated.
To do that, he wants to direct churches, aid organizations, and shelters to align their resources to get people a place to stay while supporting their needs, similar to the services at Shelter KC.
If you just put in affordable housing and you don't deal with the core issues of addiction and mental health, then that's not going to end homelessness.
Executive Director Eric Berger wants to make sure people first feel safe and seen before helping them become successful.
Many of our people have never had healthy relationships, so you're connected into a good workplace, good housing, a support system of a church, a recovery group.
So it's a holistic approach.
It's a holistic approach, but it's also how do we have relationship with people?
For Smoke and Serena, they're getting a new home, and not a moment too soon. Their previous tent burned down.
It's just going to be nice opening and closing the door. Hey, we're home. Let's just keep doing it, you know? Hey, we're home.
a home, and a new, safer place to call their own. Ian Lee, CBS News, Kansas City.
All right, coming up for you all, we are tracking severe storms and unseasonably high temperatures. One last look at your weekend forecast is next. You're in the right place, streaming CBS News 24/7.
This explains the handcuffs. It's still not clear why he's here. If we want to bring the world back from the brink, we have to deal with him. Should he?
Ooh, that looks good. That's Mission Impossible, The Final Reckoning, starring Tom Cruise. This will be in theaters in just 1 week from today, and it's one of the films playing at the Cannes Film Festival in France right now. The festival showcases upcoming films from around the world and really is considered the film industry's most prestigious event, or at least one of the top events. Let's bring in David Canfield now, who is in Cannes. He's the Hollywood correspondent for Vanity Fair and can tell us what to look out for. David, great to have you with us. Which films are generating the most buzz right now?
Well, certainly Tom Cruise is always going to get some attention, right? But beyond that, we have a huge weekend coming up, including Eddington, which is the new film from director Ari Aster. He made the horror films Hereditary and Midsommar. This movie stars Pedro Pascal, Joaquin Phoenix, Emma Stone, and more, and is described as a satire set in 2020, so you can imagine it'll be pretty potent politically. Tomorrow night, we have the Jennifer Lawrence film, Die My Love. This is her return to Cannes, one of her biggest roles in quite some time. Comes from the director Lynn Ramsey, who's more of a, auteur on the international scene. And there are a lot of questions about that one. People don't know much about it yet.
And I think one of the things that always jumps out to me from this specific festival is that, sure, there are some big production movies that are screened, but also independent and smaller, lesser-known films with lesser-known people. What are some of the major themes that you're seeing this year? Is it leaning more into one than the other?
Well, so far, I think it's a big international showcase, certainly. Mm-hmm. So, for example, yesterday there was a premiere of a film called Left-Handed Girl. People will maybe gravitate toward that because it was co-written, produced, and edited by Sean Baker, who directed the film Anora, which won the Best Picture Oscar last year, and also won the top award at Cannes. But the film is actually directed by a protege of his, Shijin Cao, and it's a beautiful Taiwanese film that really takes some surprising turns. And there are a lot of films like that you don't necessarily expect to have on your radar that suddenly can become big players in award season, big players at the box office, and things like that.
Yeah, it's great to hear about the kind of lesser-known films that can, well, no pun intended. There's also some headlines I've seen, sorry about that, about the dress code, some edits, you can't wear certain things. Is that for real, and what's been the reaction to it?
It is for real. Glamour comes at a cost here in the south of France. And indeed, when it comes to the new dress code policy, the festival has specified that gowns cannot be too voluminous. They have banned nudity. They can't have long trains on their gowns. Halle Berry, who's currently serving on the main competition jury, actually had to exchange her opening night dress. She had a train that ran too long. And while she sounded a little disappointed about that, she did say that the no nudity rule is probably a good thing.
Fascinating as we're looking at some of the very long trains and elaborate dresses from years past. David Canfield, hope you enjoy yourself this weekend. What a tough place to be. Thanks for speaking with us. Great to see you.
I'll try to survive. Right. Thanks for having me.
You got it. Let's bring in CBS News Philadelphia meteorologist Tammy Sousa now with the last look at your national forecast. Tammy?
Yeah, you know what? We're looking at across the country. We are looking at this storm system, and it is actually slowly making its way to the north and the east. And the thing is it's going to be with us for the rest of the afternoon, and it's going to be with us for tonight. So what we're looking at right now and what we're dealing with right now is perhaps the severe threat that's going to linger through the morning. Sorry about that. That's all part of the Mission Impossible effect there. We are looking at the main part of the system across the plains in the upper Midwest, and the rest of it is slowly pushing into the Tennessee and Ohio valleys. And then we're looking at watches that have been issued already. We do have one that is in the Tennessee Valley. This one is until 2 o'clock. This is parts of Tennessee and Kentucky. A brand new severe thunderstorm watch has been issued right here in the Northeast. This is mainly be the Philadelphia area, and we do have some watches there as well. Let's talk about the heat very briefly because the heat is on. We are looking at the southern states cooking. Wherever you see this red, and look at these numbers, they're going to be in the 90s and even some triple digits. So all of you stay cool everywhere from Phoenix to Miami and anywhere in between. Back to you, Errol.
Vice. Tammy, that's how we prove to viewers that this is live and in real time. Sometimes things are unexpected. Great to see you today. Yeah. Please do enjoy your weekend. And that does it for me this Friday, but stay right where you are. After the break, Mugo Odigwe is live from San Francisco with all the breaking news from coast to coast. This is CBS News 24/7.